Hey guys, welcome to a new OT coding video. This is Beginner Tutorials 2 and we're going to be learning about variables. The first thing you need to know about variables is it's quite like a box. So you might have a box here and you might name it Jerry. And inside this box you will store something. So let's say we store the number 2. So this is the variable right here. Its name, Jerry, and what it holds in it is 2. So if we were to print out Jerry, so you might say print, oh, it's in the T, print Jerry. Sorry for my bad handwriting, but anyway, print Jerry, that would basically print out 2. So that's basically what a variable is quite like. What we first do is we'll call it the variable Jerry, just like we did in Photoshop. There we go, Jerry is 2. Jerry equal 2. There we go. Now, let's print out Jerry. So, let me save it first and run. There we go. 2. Jerry is equal to 2. So you might be asking, well, does it have to be named Jerry for a variable? No, it doesn't actually. It can be named anything you ever wanted. For example, let's name hello. And let's run it. And you might be like, why is this erroring? Well, because we said print Jerry, but Jerry doesn't exist. It's now hello. So we could make one called Jerry, and we could make that equal to 3, and we have one that's also hello that's equal to 2. So when we run this, you'll see it prints out 2, but if we put in hello, it'll print out, Jerry printed out 3 and hello printed out 2. So this is great. And you can see that it's equal to 2. But right here you can see it says 2 equals int. But what's an integer? Because what if we made Jerry 3 like this? What's the difference between these two? You might ask. Well, this one is an integer, whereas this one is a string. And, what's the difference between them? So, a string can be anything. It could be a jumble of words. It could be a sentence like hello world, for example. Whereas an integer is just a number. So it could be 5, it could be minus 6, for example. Oh, minus 6, there we go. But an integer cannot be a decimal. So can't be 0.4, for example. That's not an integer. Integer is a whole number that can be negative or positive. So if we try to run this and we print it out, it does print out 0.4, right? But you might be wondering, well, you said it was a decimal, but that's because this isn't an integer anymore. It's called a float, right there. So a float is quite like an integer, but it can be points. So it can be 0.5, it can be 0.5, it can be 0.6, it can be minus 0.2. It can be any points. And so there's lots of different types of variables. And you might be like, okay, well, how can we tell which type it is in Python? So there's a really cool function actually called type. And this will tell you the type. So for example, we'll say hello. And if we print this, it'll say type float. So that's pretty cool. Then we might print out Jerry. Oh, Jerry. There we go. And look, type string. There we go. So what you can also do is, you might be like, okay, well, if we did something like, so can you add 2 strings and can you add 2 integers? So you can. So if we had hello and we had hello 2 maybe, or we'll say hello 2, yeah. That equaled 0.3. Can we print out hello plus hello 2? And we can, look, there you go, 0.7. So that means we could probably make, so there's other types of variables, for example, a boolean. So let's say name Bob. So this can be a boolean. So a boolean is either true or false. So it can be true or it can be false. So let's print out the type of Bob. Yep, there you go, it's bool, which means boolean. So a boolean is really good, for example, for something like if you're trying to store, like, if something is true or false, then you can do this with a boolean, as in true or false, with Bob. So it is good naming your variables to different words, but you might want to name them something like that you'll remember, because if you just name it random names, that won't be very helpful when you're trying to read your program again. So let's write a program. So let's write a program from the things that we've learned. So maybe we could write something that pluses 2 numbers together. So we'll have 2 variables. So we'll say number 1. It's good also to have underscores instead of just putting them all together so you can see what it is. So number 1 equals input, like we used last time. And what do we want it to say? So we want it to say maybe put in the first number or something. Oh, always remember quotations. Okay. Now let's copy this. Copy. And paste. And we'll rename this to number 2. And we'll say our second number. Okay. So next thing we'll do is we'll print out number 1 plus number 2, just like we wanted to do. Now, you might be like, oh, this is going to be great. If I put in 1 plus 1, it'll give out 2. But let's see what happens. Number 1, put in the second number, 1, gives out 11. But do you know why it gives out the number 11? It's actually because these are strings. So if you have the number 1, so if you have 1 plus 1, that will be equal to 1 and 1, which is 11. It'll just get these two numbers and just put them together like that. Whereas we want to actually say if this was an integer, 1 plus 1 equals 2. So how can we change a string into an integer? Well, there is functions for that. So you can say int, which changes it to an integer. And there's also, if you have an integer and you want to change it with a string, you can also do str, which is string. So let's put them into integers. Let's try it out again. So 1, 1, 1, 2. There we go. So we can run this again and we can say anything. We can say spam lots of characters. We'll see what it gives out. There you go. That's the correct answer. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.